Got surprised. Okay. Welcome. Okay, so as we start today, what I'd like to invite you to is to just observe for a moment, observe your own experience and notice what's going on in your own experience. So that doesn't mean that you have to come up with the right answer. It's a living process, so just observe. And notice, what is it that what's your standard for determining whether you're doing well or not? How do you know? I mean, right now, not, I mean, maybe generally, but right now, in this case, just look right now. How do you know if you're, how do you know? What do you use to judge that? So let's take a look, okay, together. So you've looked individually and now let's look together. So let's just kind of look one thing at a time. So what is it that we can be aware of? Okay, so we can be aware of what we're seeing, or we could be aware that we are seeing. Now, does what you're seeing really determine whether you're successful or unsuccessful? Whether you're happy or unhappy? I mean, I'm not sure what words to use here to differentiate here. Let's just say if you're doing well or not well. Okay, so that will be our binary. Is just let's just kind of reduce it to what is it that we're kind of navigating all the time, right? If you just notice, we're navigating. You determine, I need to do something different. So you're navigating. I'll keep doing the same thing. So it's navigation. It's just you're kind of steering, guiding. And I'm wanting us to take a look at what is it that determines whether you steer or how you steer. And I'm looking at, let's reduce that to this primal binary of what we could just call, I'm doing well or I'm not doing well in the moment. So I like this experience or I don't like this experience. Something's good, something's bad. Okay. primary kind of reduction of what is it that determines, how do we determine this? This seems to me very important, because if we don't look at this, then we're missing really the most important thing. Because if we think that it's all about something else, and we're not looking at this, we're not looking at this very, very primary issue, then how can we expect that we'll ever achieve whatever it is that we're hoping we're going to achieve if we haven't really taken a look to see it? What is actually, how do we determine whether we're going to do or not do, go or not go, rest or not rest? How do we determine that? How do we determine whether we're complete or incomplete, happy or unhappy? What is this? If we don't recognize this, if we haven't looked carefully at this, if we aren't really clear on this, no matter what we achieve, no matter where we go, no matter what we do, no matter anything, how can we expect that we'll really be satisfied if we haven't looked at this most important thing? So let's look at this, because it's the most important thing. So in your own experience right now, just notice, does what you see, is that an important determinant in whether you say, I'm doing well or I'm not doing well? Does it really matter what you see? You could put it another way. Have you ever had the experience of seeing something and then you determine I'm doing well, or you determine I'm not doing well? And then have you ever possibly seen the same thing and determined the opposite? Could you see something and while seeing that determine I'm doing well, and then at another time you could see it, the same thing, and you could determine I'm not doing well? Do you understand what I'm getting at here? Does the seeing and what we're seeing, does that really matter? Is that really what matters to us? So I will say no. You take a look for yourself. I say no. That's my experience. I say I don't notice that what I see matters, because I could see a rainbow, and in one time I see a rainbow and I think I'm doing well. And at another time I see a rainbow and I just think I'm not doing well. So it doesn't seem that the seeing is a major determinant. Okay, we can move on now. So hearing, does what you hear really matter? Maybe it gets a little easier now that we've covered the first one. I would say no, hearing doesn't really matter, because we can hear something. Somebody could say, you're the greatest. And one time we hear that and we say, I'm doing well. And another time we hear the same thing and we say, I'm not doing well. Taste, that's probably an easy one. That doesn't really matter, right? Smell, no, not really. Touch, not really. What about what we think? So sometimes we've been taught that what we think really matters a lot. So you can test it out. You just notice right now, are you doing well or are you not doing well? Or maybe you say, it's neutral. Okay. So now think the thought, I'm doing well. Does the thought I'm doing well cause you to have this experience that you're doing well, or does it not really matter? You could think the thought I'm not doing well. Does that really change anything significantly? I mean, really? Now, I will say that the types of thoughts that seem to dominate probably are reflective of something, but they don't seem to be causative. Doesn't seem to really determine the thought that I have doesn't really determine whether I'm doing well or not well. The thought may be just reflective of whether I perceive that I'm doing well or not. But in and of itself, the thought doesn't seem to cause doing well or not doing well. Okay. So maybe we could just cut to the chase. What about how you feel? Oh, I see a no on that one. Well, good for you. I'd be willing to bet you are in the minority. I mean, isn't it true that for most of us, isn't it really true that how we feel is we're just constantly monitoring, how do I feel? Do I feel good? Do I not feel good? Do I feel successful? Do I feel unsuccessful? Isn't that really what we're monitoring? I feel pain. I feel pain-free. I feel, whatever. Constantly monitoring, how do you feel? Emotionally, physically. Can we really separate them? Emotional and physical? Mental, spiritual? I mean, all the feelings are feelings, aren't they? So if you really strongly disagree, then that's fine. But I'm willing to bet most of us are constantly monitoring how we feel. So here's why this is important. I think it was on Friday in the Q&A at the end, there was a question asked. I forget exactly how it was phrased, but it kind of got to the same point, which is that this concern for how I feel seems to be that what's um, the main determinant. It's what it is that the criteria that I use to determine how and what to do. So if I think I'm feeling well, then to a certain degree, there's a kind of relief. On the other hand, concurrent with that, there's usually an anxiety because we have this other recognition that it's not going to last forever. And, maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not quite perfect yet. It's good. It's all right, but it's not, is there anything that could be improved? Yeah, it could be improved. Okay. Just can't fully rest yet. Or we say, I feel bad. Oh, okay. Well, then what do I need to do in order to stop feeling bad? So we can't rest because we're feeling bad. We have to determine, what am I going to do? What's the solution going to be? So Now notice this monitoring of how you feel. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me about whether this is the main determinant, just notice your own experience of of monitoring how you feel. So just observe for a moment this experience of monitoring how you feel. Can you notice that it kind of, your attention seems to just, it's like like it's in orbit around this, how you feel. Never fully breaks away. It's constantly orbiting around, how do I feel? How do I feel? How do I feel? How about now? What about now? How do I feel? Now, can you notice that this monitoring of how you feel, can you notice what it produces? Just observe your own experience right now and just see if you can notice. If you can observe that your attention seems to be, and by the way, even if you disagree with me about feeling, just notice what it is that just notice that you're monitoring. Okay. So we could even just simplify it to that. Just notice that you're monitoring. You're monitoring something. So just notice that. Just notice that your attention seems to just kind of be stuck monitoring something. It's like, at least in the United States, we have this, we do a lot of road trips in the United States. And so there's this classic line that kids ask their parents when going on a long trip, are we there yet? So you just notice maybe that kind of sense of, are we there yet? But you're never there yet because you're just constantly monitoring. Never fully at rest because there's this constant monitoring, constant assessment, constant something, whatever we want to call it. And then just notice what does that produce? Does that produce a sense of imprisonment? Like you have a sense of being stuck? You know that there's something else possible, or you suspect there's something else possible, or you hope there's something else possible, but you don't seem to be able to access it, at least not for very long, because even if you catch a glimpse of it, you seem to return to what? To this. Do you notice that? So there's this kind of invisible prison. Do you feel a little bit like you're in an invisible prison? Have you ever felt like that? You've noticed? I mean, you must if you're here. I mean, come on. I mean, why would any talk of, I mean, this is the title of this meeting is Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness. So what, I mean, health, wealth, and happiness, we have ideas about those, of course. But if you look at the essence of it, what's attractive about it? If you have health, if you have wealth, if you have happiness, then you don't need anything. That covers the basics, doesn't it? Do you need anything else if you got health, wealth, and happiness? You have health, wealth, and happiness, aren't you finally free? free of that constant monitoring. Are we there yet? Am I okay yet? So you're here, you must be here, because at least on some level, you recognize there seems to be this invisible prison. I don't understand what this prison is, because I'm looking everywhere and I don't see it. I don't see the prison, but I feel as though I'm in a prison. Of course, the mind comes up with ideas about it, tries to define the prison, right? I mean, we all know that you've gone through those stages where, the prison was other people, it's your parents when you're younger, and then it's your spouse and your children when you have a family, and or your employer or the system or the government or whatever, this, or life itself just creates this prison, or the body is the prison, whatever. You come up with all of these theories, but each one of those theories breaks down. It doesn't really, when you really inquire, none of those theories hold true, because ultimately you recognize, well, you're always free. I mean, at the heart, at the core, you're always free. And the prison doesn't really actually, it's not, you experience the prison. It's not a product of something external. It's an internal experience. So if you really start to look at it, then, okay, there seems to be a prison, but it's invisible. I can't find it. What is the nature of this prison? This is why I'm saying, this is why this is so important. This is the most important thing, because so long as we don't examine the nature of this invisible prison, what do we hope we're going to accomplish? We accomplish so many things and none of them satisfy us. None of them give us what we really want, because no matter what we accomplish, we still have this sense of, I'm in this invisible prison. Now I have this invisible prison that with, high rent, and maybe I've got gourmet food, but it's still a prison, and I don't understand it. So that's why I'm saying, let's look at the nature of the prison itself. See if we can discover something about it that will actually be helpful. So notice in your own experience, if you can notice this sense of this invisible prison, and that this invisible prison is we could say really is this constant monitoring. I mean, could you imagine for a moment if you weren't compelled to do that? Could you imagine what that would be like? If you could just try it for one moment, just for one moment. Don't monitor, don't give any concern to any of it. Don't, just for one instant. And then notice, what's that like? Isn't there the direct experience of freedom? Just one instant. And then you should be very curious, I would hope, at least. Okay, but what is this then? How do I return to this invisible prison? Because I catch a glimpse of this freedom just for one instant. I mean, just like that. Between the monitoring, between the thoughts, between all of it, just for one instant. Just see, just notice. There's total freedom here. Nothing binding anything. You don't have to do anything. You're not bound by anything. Nothing is required of you. There's no limitation, just for one instant. Then the next instant, maybe you find again, oh, here's the invisible prison. How do you know? Just take a look. How do you know? How do you know that you're unhappy, discontent? How do you know any of that? Isn't it because you say, well, I feel bad. I feel like I'm in prison. I feel limited. I feel bound. I feel constricted. I feel that something's not right. So then just see, you're back to orbiting around that monitoring of this assessment of how am I? Am I okay? Am I not okay? Am I doing it? Am I not doing it? Am I succeeding? Am I not succeeding? Constant monitoring. So what, look and see what is, we talk about an ego, but I want to point out that is the ego is a illusion. Um, if you've ever had the experience of a light in the dark attached to a chain or a rope or a string, and it's swung around, so it could be a firebrand or could be a LED or something that's spinning around in the dark, and it seems as though you can see a circle. Maybe you've had this experience. If you haven't had the experience, you could at least imagine it. Say, oh, there's a circle. But there's no circle. I mean, there's a circle in your imagination. There's a perception of circle, but is there a thing there, a circle that you can grasp? No. There's the perception of a circle. It's an illusion. So the ego is very much like that. That's what I'm trying to point out here. The ego, what we say, well, this prison, the ego is, we talk about the ego, say the ego is the problem, the ego is the prison. But the ego gets a bad rap because the ego doesn't even exist. The ego is like that firebrand that's circling around. Rather, it's like the circle that appears. There's no thing there. So here I'm just pointing out that this prison, this ego, and you just look to your own experience, is this illusion generated by this constant monitoring. So as it turns out, the monitoring itself isn't even a problem. Even if the monitoring continues, it's just that when we mistake that for there being something that's binding or bound, that we mistake that there's a prison, and that prison, I am in that prison, I am that prison. You get to a certain point in your life and you really, really, you look and look and look and try so many things, and then you get to a point and you realize I am that prison. Early on, like I say, you can think, oh, it's my parents, it's my teachers, it's my friends, it's my enemies, it's my boss, it's my spouse, it's my children, it's the system, it's the government, it's this, it's that. And you get, blessedly, at a certain point, if you really keep looking honestly, you realize it's none of those things, it's none of them. And you come to this very painful realization: I am the prison. I am unhappy. I am discontent. I am miserable. So if you just stop there, then you'll be very depressed and you'll have a very, very hard time. And why would that be? It would be because it's painful because it's not true. All right, it's a half truth. not even a half-truth. It's a, I don't know what to call it, but it's not true. It's not entirely false, but it's not true. It's sort of like the snake in the rope. You see a snake in the rope. There's something hinting at a snake. That's why you see the snake in the rope, but there is no real snake. So there's something here that is, there's some kind of phenomenon that hints at this sense of I am this prison. That's not entirely wrong, but it's halfway. And if we don't see all the way through, then we just get stuck in perpetual suffering without any of the without any hope. Because before we still had hope, when we thought it was about these other things. If you think it's about something or someone else is the problem, some other thing is the problem, there's something then you can do. You can find a solution, you can fight for the freedom. You're going to arrive at it in the future. That hope is there when you finally recognize I am the prison. And this, at this point, it doesn't even matter. You can say, yes, the world is awful. Yes, these systems are awful. Yes, it's all oppressive. Yes, it's all stupid. Yes, fine. And you recognize, and it doesn't matter one bit because I am the prison. No matter how much I resolve those things, I could make this world perfect in every possible way, and still I would be in prison because I am the prison. So this is a powerful insight, and it's maybe necessary, but it's halfway. And if you stop there, you will be miserable without end, without hope. And if you just wait, what are you waiting for? See, then this is important, because if you look, you'll see what you're waiting for is to feel better. And this is the essence, this is what I'm pointing out. This is the essence of the whole delusion. So when you get to this point, when you realize I am the prison, if you then just wait to feel better, you are only going to be waiting forever, because you are feeding in to the very prison. You're feeding this false ego. It doesn't even exist, but you're feeding it. You're still spinning the firebrand and believing that that is the prison that binds you. Okay. So now, of course, we want a way out. How do I get out of this prison? So the one who wants out of the prison, you want out of the prison, right? Some of you either I've confused you entirely or you're too proud to admit it. You still want out of the prison. I want out of the prison. Everybody wants out of the prison. That's why we're here. It's okay. Just admit it. So we want out of the prison, but now, how do we do that? See, I'm saying that we first have to recognize, we have to come to this recognition that the prison, I am the prison. I want out of the prison. So we could say these are the steps. First, I am the prison. The second step is I want out of the prison, just to admit I want out of the prison. Now, see the conundrum here. If you recognize that you are the prison, so this compulsive monitoring, this constant assessment. Am I okay? Am I there yet? Am I still suffering? Am I still in prison? Am I free yet? Have I arrived? How do I feel now? Will it last? This constant churning, that is the prison, and that's what you mistake yourself to be. Okay. Then the realization, the admission, I want out of this prison. It's essential, because if you don't make these two steps, first to recognize that if you still think it's something external, if you still think it's something or someone else, then you're not looking where you actually have leverage. You're looking everywhere else. And then you become increasingly frustrated and desperate because there's no possibility of fixing the problem out there. That's the point I'm making. So that's the first step. The second step is to see, okay, even though I am the prison and I see that no amount of fixing it out there will ever really fix this prison. It will never free me. Still, I want out of the prison. So now we have a conundrum. If you really recognize this, so you have to look for yourself to see how this is true. See how there's no way that anything, any condition can be met that will give you the freedom that you're looking for. Just see that whatever you do, whatever you accomplish, whatever you learn, whatever you understand, whatever you acquire, any of it, even if you acquire a very high state. This is an important point, because we think, I just want to feel good. Isn't that right? Don't you just want to feel good? I mean, come on, don't you want to feel good? Everybody wants to feel good. No, you don't have to be ashamed if you want to feel good. You want to feel good. But see that even if you feel good, even if you acquire that, and I'm not saying that feeling good is bad. I'm not saying that. Feeling good is fine. It's not an obstacle. I'm just saying that to recognize that first and foremost, the most important thing is not feeling good. Feeling good is totally a distant second. Because see that even if you get that state of feeling good, and even if you get a very high state of feeling good, I mean a very high state, the highest state of feeling good that you can imagine. I want you to imagine now, whatever that highest state of feeling good is, and I want you to imagine that you've acquired that. It's yours now. And I want you to imagine that you even have a guarantee that you're going to have this very high state of feeling good for 1,000,000 years. It's a long time. You won't be truly satisfied, will you? You have to see it. You have to see that no matter what you acquire, it won't free you of the prison. You say, see, for those of you who have been following along with the Ramayana, you know both Ravana and his son, when they get their boons from the gods, they both want the same thing. They want immortality. And they're told, both of them are told by, I think both of them by Brahma, they're told, sorry, I can't do that because I am also not immortal. And the point is that anything created has an end. And so we think naively, only because we're allowed to continue projecting out into the future, somehow it's going to resolve itself. And if I can just acquire this, everything else will take care of itself. But it won't. You have to see. Just feeling good, even supremely good, even for a very long time, won't do it completely. And in fact, this discontent, this seed of unhappiness remains. So that's the first thing I'm pointing to. Recognize that. Second thing is to recognize that you still want out of the prison. So I am the prison, I want out of the prison. Now we have this conundrum. What on earth do we do about this? So you've probably heard this before, that it's just it's a misunderstanding. It's that we say, I am this one who is defined by discontent, defined by lack, defined by primal unhappiness, primal longing. So I am the prison, and I want out of the prison. So this is the misunderstanding. There's no way to resolve this at that level. I hope that's clear. When you really recognize this, you see, yes, I am the prison. Who I have understood myself to be is the prison. I am this unhappiness. I am this discontent. I am this monitoring of how I feel. I am this longing for a supremely good feeling. See that, and then recognize, and I want more than anything, I want to be free of this prison. More than anything. Because you have to, in order to really recognize this, you have to see, you have to use your imagination. So this has to be active. You can't do this passively. So I'm inviting you to look for yourself and see, and these are things that can be uncomfortable. Because most of the time what we're promised, and you can just take a look and see that this is true, most of the time we're promised some point in the future, it's all going to be okay. You're going to get what you want. You're going to get that supreme state of good feeling, and you're going to get that forever. We're promised that. And so we've been allowing ourselves to be deluded, and therefore to continue to live this lie and thereby suffer. So, as I said last week, if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel frustrated, if you feel discouraged, disappointed, angry, any of these things, bored, these are all good signs that you're doing it correctly, because what's being revealed when you look in this way is the absolute hopelessness of every single thing that we've ever done or could ever do in terms of delivering on what it is that we truly want. So you have to look for yourself and recognize just how absolutely hopeless it is, because everything that you can acquire, it will go. It's not forever. And what you want is something that is forever. You don't want something that is temporary and transient, because all that does is produce anxiety. So you have to see that, and then if you're really looking honestly, you're going to feel uncomfortable. And then you have to see, more than any of that, more than anything else that I can come up with, more than any of the solutions or remedies that I can imagine or have ever tried or could imagine ever trying, more than any acquisition, more than any feeling, what I want more than any of that is to be free of this prison. prison that I am. Okay, so now see how all of this, remember I've been saying that if you notice all of this, if you're really looking, you'll see that it's all it's very insular. It's very, we could say narcissistic. It's all fixated, constantly monitoring something. And this is the core thing you see. I want to feel good. Constantly monitoring that. So here, we've already tasted it. We've already had a taste of it. I've at least invited you to it, which is just for an instant, just drop that fixation just for one instant. And notice that in that one instant, if you're not monitoring that, if you're not looking to see, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Is it okay now? What about now? If you're not doing that just for one instant, notice that here you are free of the prison. You're beyond free of the prison, because there is no prison at all. There's no possibility of bondage. And then in the next moment, most likely, there's a return to that habit of the monitoring, fixation. So then, oh, okay, how was that? Oh, that was pretty good. How am I going to get that? How do I draw that into my orbit so that I can have that forever, so I can fix myself, fix the prison? And there if you fall for that one, you've fallen for the most basic trap, which is with the one we all fall for. But just take a look and see what is this experience. We'll call it an experience. I don't know if it's an experience, but we'll call it an experience. What is this experience of freedom? If you're following along, if you're looking directly for yourself, can you notice it? Can you observe it? This experience of freedom, this glimpse of freedom. Does it have anything whatsoever to do with this fixation on how I'm doing? So you see, there's the answer. Now notice, notice this. See if you, I want you, this is important, that this is not just a glimpse. So we have glimpses. I point out the glimpse, but now I want you to discover directly that this is always available, and more than available, that you can actively choose it. And that because of this habit of the fixation, there's a momentum there, or there's a kind of pull to come back to that fixation, start orbiting around it again. So you can be active in this. I want you to notice how you can do this, how you can choose this. So again, just drop all of that and just notice this freedom, even if it's just for one instant. But I want you to do that repeatedly right now. And see if you can just keep choosing that. Just keep doing that, so that it just becomes maybe it's like a pulsation, where you just, like, with every heartbeat, you're just dropping that fixation. You just start to notice maybe that compulsion to fixate again, and with that next heartbeat, you're just don't. Just like that. And notice, what is your experience of your perception? So for one, if you can, again, notice what the experience, how your perception is when you're fixated. So fixate on, how am I doing now? Is that working now? Am I getting it yet? How about, will this last tomorrow? Can I carry it over until tomorrow? Will this solve my problems? All that kind of thing. Notice the quality of your perception. Notice that perception is kind of narrow. tight. And then again, just drop it. So it's like now notice this perception as you drop it, it's like an open perception. It's perceiving without an object. Or we could say it's like from this kind of inner fixation to this open outward flow. So notice that you can actually choose this. And you can choose this without any, there are no conditions. So even if you say, and I've talked about this a couple times recently, I think in response to some questions that people asked during the Q&As, but even if there's an objection that says, I can't, it's not working. Whether that happens now or it happens later, just notice then, don't accept that that's true. If there's an objection that says, I can't, it's not working, refuse to accept that that is true. Instead, just hear this. There are no conditions for this. This is your unconditional reality. And if you accept that, not as a belief, but as a starting point for your inquiry, then look to find out, how is that true? So as a belief, it does you no good, but if you accept that as the starting point for the inquiry, then you can become very curious. Okay, how could that be true? And so what I've proposed in the past is, okay, at a certain level, there's something that you have equated, some kind of condition that you've equated with letting go, or whatever you want to call it. That's not always available because it's conditional. So inevitably, at some point, that won't be available. And if you've equated that with freedom, then you'll say, well, I'm not free and I can't do it. It's not working. Okay, great. This is a great opportunity for a deeper inquiry. So then pause and look to see, okay, I'm accepting as my starting point for my inquiry that there is no condition for this freedom. Therefore, I want to find out how that's true right now. So I'm thinking that there is a condition. That's what seems to be here, because in the past, whatever it is that I've relied upon to give me some experience that I equate with this freedom, that's not available. So now I need to take a step back and look to see, how am I, see, I'm fixating on that. So I need to, that's still another monitoring. It's not working, means I'm not feeling the way I want to feel. So let me now drop that. And the mind can object to this, because the mind will say, can kick and scream and say, well, it's not fair. I want to feel good. But the whole point is that fixation on how do I feel is the prison. And in an instant, you can glimpse your true nature free of that prison right now. And then in the light of that freedom, what happens is that everything that has obscured that clarity, everything that you've fixated on, everything that you've judged as problematic, all of that at some point has to come into the light, to be recognized, to be liberated. So we could say, the truth of who you are cannot be liberated. The truth of who you are is ever free. But something can be liberated. Many things can be liberated. Everything can be liberated. You're not a thing, but everything can be liberated. How is everything liberated? It's liberated in the light of the consciousness that you are. How is that? Now, liberation is an event. Liberation is something that happens. How does that happen? It happens when you as consciousness offer that liberation. How? By continuing to recognize and remain true to your true nature, which is already freedom. You confer that quality of freedom on the thing that's appearing. So I've talked about this in other terms before, which is that when a thing appears, now the thing is what? It's a hallucination. But whatever the thing is that appears, that hallucination, it acquires its qualities based on what? Based on the supreme reality, you. So if you as the supreme reality confer upon that through a posture of fixation, then what the outcome of that is that the perception of that thing is not liberated. You see? On the other hand, whatever that thing is, even if it's appeared 1,000,000 times in the past, and every time in the past, we took this posture of fixation, closedness, armoredness, fear, aggression, whatever, and therefore had a perception of bondage. In this instant, right now, when it appears, it's totally fresh. Whatever has happened in the past has no bearing whatsoever. In this instant, it's simply up to us now. What now? Either we fixate and hold this false notion of bondage and therefore we perceive bondage, or we remain open, recognizing our true nature. And therefore, this is liberated. Whatever is perceived is liberated because the thing is nothing other than the perception. If the perception is a liberated perception, then whatever is perceived is liberated. That's true of anything, any object, including the object of ourselves. Therefore, the prison that we are ceases to be in the instant that we take a liberated posture or a liberated perception toward that which we have perceived ourselves to be. And that's all. So as always, thank you for joining. And for those who are here live, we can stay on for the Q&A. So I'll end this recording now.